Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cinema Chat. I am your humble host, David Heath, and I'm excited about this week's podcast. I will be talking about Can't Buy Me Love, a 1988 film starring Patrick Dempsey and Amanda Peterson, and I will have a special guest, and you'll hear me throughout the beginning of the podcast, the first half of the podcast. You'll hear me talk about me having potentially Devin DeVasquez on my show, and she played Iris in the movie, and I am delighted to say that I did have an interview with her, and you'll hear that on the tail end. But in the big first half of the podcast, you'll hear me talk about it as a maybe. Well, it is a definite, and stay tuned for the entire podcast because the lovely Devin DeVasquez talks with me about her time in the movie and her time in Hollywood. Enjoy. Hello and welcome to Cinema Chat. This is the podcast where we talk about the movies and the people that made them. And today I'm going to be talking about the 1987 film Can't Buy Me Love. By the way, I am your humble host, David Heath. I need to introduce myself, in case you didn't know. Can't Buy Me Love, 1987, directed by Steve Rash. He had developed a good reputation from directing the Buddy Holly story, which got a lot of good reviews. He also did direct a film called Under the Rainbow in 1981, starring Chevy Chase and Carrie Fisher. I think I'm one out of about 50 people that saw that film, by the way. And I actually like that film. It has terrible reviews talking about Under the Rainbow. But Can't Buy Me Love, directed by Steve Rash, stars Patrick Dempsey. Is in, yes, that Patrick Dempsey that would later become McDreamy in Grey's Anatomy. He is a guy in this film with total nerd status. He plays Ronald, a lawn boy who has the idea to offer $1,000 to pay for a month-long fake relationship with Cindy Mancini, played by Amanda Peterson. The working title was called Boy Rents Girl. And Cindy Mancini is the ultimate dream girl for any boy going to that school. She is one of the most popular girls, if not the most popular in the school. She's very condescending, though, at first to Ronald, and but she comes to realize that she has been very, very shallow, and as they progress throughout the film, she softens on him and actually has a little bit of good feelings toward him. Let's see, Tina Caspary and Darcy DeMoss play Cindy's friends, and they are quite shallow as well. Eric Broscotter and Gerardo Mejia play dumb and shallow football players that are really hugely responsible for the divide in the school. Gerardo Mejia is also the guy that would go on to sing Rico Suave. He's that guy in 1991, a few years later. He is now a pastor of a church in Ashland, Kentucky, by the way. Ronald abandons his nerd friends after he gets connected with Cindy. He starts to kind of forget where he came from and starts hanging out with the cool kids. But his best friend is Kenneth. And Kenneth is played by Courtney Gaines, who has a really long film career, including a lot of TV work. He's been on a lot of TV shows. And see, there's a young Seth Green that plays Ronald's brother Chuck. And the funny thing about Chuck is he too is a nerd, and I think he's trying to desperately not become one. And if he makes fun of his brother Ronald enough, then maybe he won't be that. I think that's what he's thinking. He's constantly making fun of Ronald, but it's like one of those kids. I used to know somebody who would make fun of other people's cars all the time, but he didn't have a car. Amy Dolenz plays in the film too. Amy is the daughter of Mickey Dolenz, as in the Monkees, Mickey Dolenz. But she appears in the film as well, as she is one of Cindy's friends. And our podcast guest, Devin DeVasquez, plays Iris, and they call her Iris the Virus. But we on the back end of this of this podcast, we'll have our interview with Devin DeVasquez, and it's very colorful and fun, and she has a lot to say about the movie. Well, and Cindy has a boyfriend that is in Iowa. Well, they're in Arizona, but Cindy's boyfriend is in Iowa playing for the Hawkeyes and playing football for the Hawkeyes. He's played by George Geary, and he is one of the most glaring examples of class here. And what I mean by class is nerd class, cool class, all the different types of people. But he really personifies how it is. We see him in one scene, and he is exposed as a huge jerk. Not that the others aren't, but he is one of the biggest ones. He's ignored Cindy for the longest time in college, probably fooling around with some other girl in college and keeping poor Cindy on a little bit of a string. But anyway, the film talks quite a bit about, or kind of exposes the way the 80s decade was with classes, and with, you got nerds and you got your jocks. It didn't really talk about the other group, which we always called the stoners, but there are really 3 or even 4 classes of people in school. But it's interesting to see it, and I think it was glaring in the 80s. I think it was worse, but I'm not sure. Let's see. Let's talk about some of the people that are in the film and what other things they've done. We have Darcy DeMoss, who I have talked to initially about being on this particular show, but haven't heard back yet. So you may hear her on the back end as well, but we'll see. Darcy has 41 credits over 37 years of filmmaking. She has been a busy person for 37 years. That's pretty amazing. Tina Caspery plays the other friend, and she also appeared in the 1982 version of Annie, and she was cast originally. She was the original Kelly Bundy before Christina Applegate finally ended up with the role, and so that was a tough break for Tina Caspery. However, we would never have known Christina Applegate, so these things are strange how they come about. Let's see, Paula Abdul appears in the film too. She is, if you have to look really close, but she did all the choreography for the film, and this is a little bit before she was a famous pop star. She she had a lot of film credits, though. She has actually almost 100 film credits altogether, with being on the set, and some of them being an extra or an actress or whatever. But she did a lot of stuff on the set. But Amanda Peterson plays Cindy, and she's the tough one here. Really tough life, and after this really great start, she really ended up just a lot of small parts, and her career stalled in 1994. And she, I know at least a dozen guys that had a crush on Amanda Peterson back in 1987. And I know she died in 2015, and she, had a tough time battling life after stardom, and so many people have. But she unfortunately died of a drug overdose, and just a tough story to handle. And this is the one sad part about this movie is when you watch it, she's gone, and how it went. But almost all of the actors, including her, had a career after Can't Buy Me Love. Now, let's go over some tidbits here. The movie gets away with what I think is probably some R-rated content, but it is PG-13. I think that the director / producers took it to the limit and knew exactly where to stop, and they kept it at a PG-13. But I think one of the interesting things is this is only 3 years into the new rating system. A lot of people don't realize that there were no PG-13 movies prior to 1984. Red Dawn being the first one, just 3 years prior to this film coming out. And I think that there was a less definition of what a PG-13 film is. And on our last podcast, we had a similar situation with the Bad News Bears. With the Bad News Bears 1976 being really what today in today's standards would be an R-rated film, of course, because of the beer drinking by children, and also the beer drinking by Walter Matthau inside the dugout with a bunch of children. Those two things would have made it R-rated today. But it's an interesting situation when times change. And there's just no. I don't think there's. I think this today might still make PG-13, but I think it was a product of its time, and I think that the producers were lucky to have it PG-13. But that's just my opinion. I'm not sure if I'm right. But the movie deals with life themes in a really light-handed way. It doesn't shove morality or anything down our throats, but it kind of quietly talks and exposes the little class warfare that goes on in high schools, particularly in the 80s. We have to ask ourselves, why is it so segregated? There's a point in the film where it's stated that, hey, you know what? We remember when we were in kindergarten, we used to all be friends, and it's true. Why do people get so segregated in high school? And have you ever noticed some of the cool kids end up in the worst shape after they're 40? And some of the kids that weren't cool at all end up being really good citizens later in life. And they have lots of friends. And I've seen that happen, the flippy flop kind of thing, several times in my lifetime. It's interesting, though. But why do we separate like that as high schoolers? Why do we do that? And is it still that way? I'd be curious to know. I don't think that it's really something that people can really put their finger on. I think if you're a teacher that's been in the business for 40 years, I think that the kids change so slowly that you didn't recognize what the changes. And I think that if you ask your children that are high schoolers today, they wouldn't know and be able to compare it to what life was like in the 80s. But it's interesting to think about. But there's no question, anybody who is a Generation X person like I am, they're going to know, yeah, we dealt with class warfare inside the schoolhouse. But some funny lines from the movie, and you're going to hear Devin DeVasquez later repeat this. But when Iris the Virus says, or when Cindy Mancini's talking about Iris the Virus, played by Devin DeVasquez, she says she's given more rides than Greyhound, and Bobby, Cindy's lovely boyfriend. Oh boy, and I roll my eyes as I say lovely boyfriend. He says Ronald Miller, he couldn't get nailed in a wood shop. Maybe the best line though of the film was when the girl approaches Ronald and says, "Didn't you take economics? You could have had me for $49.95." The crowd laughs. And let's see. Let's talk about the song "Can't Buy Me Love." And now this was 1987. Go back to that time, and you realize the fact that the Beatles. Of course, the song is sung by it's done by the Beatles, sung by Paul McCartney. But when you go back to that time in 1987, you realize the Beatles did not own their own stuff at that point. And it was, in fact, owned by Michael Jackson. And forgive me if I have anything wrong here, but I have a feeling that if the same film were made today, then it wouldn't be a song that would be able to be inserted or included. But clearly that's why the film changed titles from Boy Meets Girl to Can't Buy Me Love. And it is a catchy title, obviously. So both of them are really kind of catchy titles. But this song definitely belongs in the film. And but I question whether or not it would be something that would have been allowed if Paul McCartney, who owns the rights now, would have owned the rights then. But anyway, something to think about. Let's see. Can't Buy Me Love brought in over $30 million. When you consider that it was 1987, that was quite a bit of money. This was not a huge budget film. And in fact, it didn't have any major film stars. They had a lot of up-and-comers, including Patrick Dempsey, and including Devin DeVasquez, who we'll talk to in a few minutes. And but it had a fairly small budget, but it brought in a lot of money. And I would venture to say that they spent a lot of money for the rights to the song, and probably a little more for that than they did a lot of the actors. And let's see, the film scored mixed reviews with critics. It only scores 48% on Rotten Tomatoes, which I think is just, how is this possible? I don't understand. But that's the way it is. But the film does have a cult following, and people like me, I was 16 when I saw this in the movie theater, and I thought it was great, and I definitely wanted to. I definitely sympathized with Ronald's situation with Cindy, because I would have wanted to date Cindy too. But anyway, let's see. We are going to go to an interview that I did with Devin DeVasquez shortly before recording this portion of the podcast. And Devin has a huge career. She's been in show business since 1985. She is a Star Search winner. She was a Star Search winner. And she won $100,000 on Star Search. I almost called it Starship again, but she has a lot of film credits, some books to her name, and she also knew Prince very well, and yes, that Prince, and as in the purple one, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And we'll also talk about her career and some of the movies that she's made, and the book that she wrote and the book she has in the works. And she also has a movie called Trailblazers in the works, which is going to be a Western, and that'll be out sometime. At some point. Life is hard right now for filmmakers because of the pandemic. But as I'm recording this, it is January still in 2021. So you're probably going to be listening to this in March-ish. But anyway, well, thank you very much for listening to this part of the podcast. But please stay on and listen to my wonderful conversation with the lovely Devin DeVasquez. Hello and welcome to Cinema Chat. This is the podcast.
Married with children.
Okay, so we are here with Devin DeVasquez, and Devin has got a lot of things going on. She was one of the stars in Can't Buy Me Love, has a pretty long IMDb list, has written a book about herself, a winner of Star Search, and also, if I have my facts right, a friend of Prince when he was with us. And I want to say thank you, Devin, for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me, Dave.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. And now, tell me, before we get started with Can't Buy Me Love and the heart of things, tell me a little bit about your charity, about your book and your website, and tell everybody what they need to look for.
Well, today I am a blogger, I'm a producer. I've been fortunate enough to win several Emmys from a new series that my husband and I produce called The Bay, the series on Amazon Prime. And I have a blog. I've written several books, actually, and I'm getting back into acting as we speak because I am producing with my husband several projects and getting excited to do a new Western movie and get back into acting. So I'm not just the things you've been talking about are things that are ongoing with me. My book is still being written, but it's the book that you're talking about is called The Day It Snowed in April, and it's my memoir you can find in Amazon. And that was inspired by my time with the rock star Prince. I wrote it after his death and was very much inspired by him during the time that I spent with him, and so that's kind of an update on where you can find me. You can find me, Devin DeVasquez, across the board on online everywhere. DevinDeVasquez.com, and that's probably the easiest place to go to just navigate to where you can find me these days.
Yeah, and you mentioned your husband. You're involved with him in business too, and he is a rock star himself, right?
Yes, he's a musician from his band Player from the 70s, known for Baby Come Back, and CBS show Bold and Beautiful that he did for 25 years as Ridge Forrester. But we're now producing several projects together, and our world's changing, as you know. So it's not so much of the content you're creating, but the person you are today. So I know you want to talk about Can't Buy Me Love and reminisce on that movie, but that was a long time ago.
Yeah, it was. Tell me the name of that Western again.
The Western is called Trailblazers.
Yeah, it's at the top of your IMDb. Yeah.
Yes, Trailblazers. I'm really looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to the changes that are coming and the future book.
How will we get to see Trailblazers, by the way?
Well, we haven't even filmed it yet.
Oh, is that right? Okay, so, gotcha.
It's in production.
Gotcha.
I mean, it's in pre-production, yeah.
Uh-huh.
So basically, and the charities I'm involved with, I give half of proceeds to my book to a charity that Prince started called #YesWeCode, which was near and dear to his heart for children learning the internet and learning how to code and all that stuff that we know today. I just chose that to honor him, but usually anything to do with human trafficking, which I think is really relevant today.
Right.
Child abuse, because it's near and dear to my heart. My husband and I tend to support charities that have to do with that, and I'm into helping animals. I have a little rescue dog named Prince that I got Shelter Hope Pet Shop, which is a local near and dear charity here in California. So the charities that we're involved with have to do with things that are near and dear to our hearts. And children and animals, they're the most innocent creatures, and they've been abused far too long.
Well, Devin, it sounds like you're a person with a really, really huge heart. That's pretty great.
Thank you.
Yeah, let me ask you to be about your time with Prince. What was he a person that was quite a bit more open when you're talking one-on-one? Because we know he was a huge introvert, but my best guess is that he opened up.
That's what my book is all about.
Fantastic!
Yeah, you'll get a good overview of what Prince was like. He was shy, but if he was comfortable with you, he was very funny, and he taught me how to play pool. He loved to play pool, and he was really good at it. And I did play basketball with him too, and he could make those hoops in his high heels. So but you have to realize, I knew Prince during Purple Rain, and I'm not going to go into the story because it's too long.
Oh, sure.
So
get the book.
If you're a Prince fan, that's why I wrote the book, because I didn't want to forget that time in my life. It was really fun and innocent and fantastic, because it was, I met him through Playboy. It was Playboy's idea for me to meet him, and how the journey that I had with him, it was through his management company, who were my managers at the time. After I won $100,000 on Star Search. I was a model. I basically came to Hollywood as a model, and after I won Star Search, Prince called and congratulated me, and his agent, his manager, were handling my career at that time. And that's how I got Can't Buy Me Love, actually, because I had gone on Johnny Carson, which no Star Search winner had ever gone on Johnny Carson, because Ed McMahon was like, he would have to have every Star Search winner on Johnny Carson. But because I had a movie, my first movie, through Prince's managers, I got my first movie, which was called House 2.
Yeah.
And I played the Virgin, and I didn't have any lines. I had never really done any acting. And because I had that movie out at the same time I won Star Search, I got on Johnny Carson. I went through the pre-interview, and they had me on, and it was very memorable, Johnny Carson. And because of that, I got the audition for Can't Buy Me Love. So really, Can't Buy Me Love was the first speaking role I had in a movie.
You're right.
And I was the oldest one in that movie. Amanda Peterson was 16 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And Patrick Dempsey was 19. In fact, I'll tell you something funny about Patrick Dempsey. Being the Playboy centerfold, and this being my first movie, my first speaking role, I had that love scene with Patrick where he recites the poetry.
Right.
You remember that
Uh-huh.
scene? And so he's reciting the poetry, because remember, I was the last cool one to go out with him.
Uh-huh.
You know, he was sort of passed around with the cool girls.
Right.
And he was this nerdy guy, and he's passed around with the cool girls because they all started to notice him and think he was hot because he went out with Cindy, you know.
Right.
Made him popular, right? So I was the last one, and I was Iris the Virus. You know, I was the girl who gave more rides than Greyhound,
Right.
basically. You know, I was judged on my looks, you know, not really for what I had to say, but just on how I looked. And all the nerds and all the cool guys kind of had that thing for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it was an important scene at the end when her how do you say, her college boyfriend shows up and sees
Bobby.
Bobby sees the nerdiest guy in school, just being the most popular guy, and wondering how he was with Iris.
Right.
And it's like, and so she was drunk, and the whole scene escalates to, from him basically going from first base, second base with Patty, played by Darcy DeMoss, to me, where he, has the bathroom scene, and he's reciting the poetry, and he's trying to impress me, and she sees him.
Uh-huh.
She's peeking and sees that he's using her poetry to try to get laid.
It's crazy, right?
For the first time. So it all she explodes because she's drunk, and she's just had it with him, because Bobby pretty much gets pissed off at her, and that's how he becomes the loneliest guy on New Year's Eve. He goes from being a geek to being the coolest guy to being a geek again to being a no man's.
Uh-huh.
Remember?
Yeah.
So that scene, those scenes were very important. And the director, Steve Rash, who directed the Buddy Holly
Mm-hmm.
story previously, I think they basically booked me as Iris the Virus based on the fact that I had won Star Search and I'd come off that New World movie of House 2. But this was really my first speaking role in a movie. And so when I had to be sexy, because I was the sex pot of the Cools, when I had to be sexy, I remember the director saying, Devin, you don't even need to, don't put sugar on ice cream. Don't play sexy. Just be, And so everything with this little movie that we were doing at that time felt good. It just felt like we had a great thing going. I mean, originally the movie was called Boy Rents Girl, and then several months later they sold it to Disney, and so I think I'm the first Playboy centerfold to work for Disney back then. But they got the rights to the Beatles song Can't Buy Me Love, and I think they paid like $50,000 for that, and we went back and redid some scenes, and then the movie came out and became a box office hit in 1987, making $35 million at the box office. So this was a big deal, because it made it not only to the theaters, but it made money. So this was $1 million budget movie at the time we made it that made $35 million at the box office. So it, launched everybody's career. Patrick Dempsey went on to do more films. Amanda Peterson, who is no longer with us.
You tell me what you remember about Amanda Peterson.
Very professional, very sweet. For 16, she was. I was amazed that she was only 16 because she seemed very mature for 16. And it was also Amy Dolenz, who was Mickey Dolenz's daughter.
That's right.
It was her first role. So we were all supportive of each other. Gerardo Mejia, who went on to be Rico Suave, and do lots of other roles in movies. Like I think he was in a movie with Paul Newman. I can't remember the name.
Color of Money. Yep.
Color of Money.
That's right.
And then you had others like the other guy that played. That I'm working with him on a upcoming film. He played Ronald's best friend. Courtney.
Yeah, Courtney Gaines. Yep.
Right, Courtney Gaines. I'm actually doing a horror film with him that a girlfriend of mine's producing called The Third Floor. That's coming up. And he's the lead in that, along with Billy McNamara. Let's see who else. Everybody in that little film went on to work. And I bounced in and out of films. I went on to do the weirdest freaking movie you've ever seen in your life.
Society?
Called Society, which was my first leading role with Billy Warlock. And then I got married and moved to Tennessee. And I came back a couple of years later and started my career up again and did Low Down Dirty Shame with Keenan Ivory Wayans and Guns with Eric Estrada. I was either the drug dealer's girlfriend back then because they didn't know quite what to do with me, or I was the sexy bad girl that, Iris the Virus. They didn't know what to do with me back then. And then Jennifer Lopez changed all that in the late 90s. And if, I think being an actress today, especially a Latin ethnic actress today, is very much in. But back when I was starting out, it was more of, I think I was working based on how I looked, which today doesn't thrill me so much. I'm 57 years old, so I'd rather be for how I think and how I view the world, and give my wisdom that I've learned to the roles that I choose to do now.
Yeah, that's you're right. And Hollywood, up to 100 years ago, literally, the Hollywood struggled with Latin actresses, because they would, like Rita Hayworth was Latin descent, and one of the most famous actresses ever, and they had difficulty with her, and they tried desperately to actually hide her heritage for the most part. She played in a couple of roles that kind of exposed her of Latin descent, but for some reason Hollywood struggled, and you're absolutely right. It's changed a lot.
I hated that it was very if you think about it, it was a lot of discrimination. You can see it back in the day. I remember watching things on television, and because I'm from the South, I'm from Louisiana.
That's right, yeah.
So I would just look at how they would be faking accents and thinking, that's not how we talk. They would just exaggerate it. You know what I mean? It was like they would take actors and put body makeup on them to make them look darker, to play Indian roles, to play Asian roles. I mean, look at how they discriminated back in the day. You can see they would hire white actors and basically try to make them look Asian or make them look ethnic instead of hiring ethnic actors back then. That all started to change little by little. And now I don't like the fact that they're discriminating in the opposite way. Like, they just want to hire you for, I mean, look at the ethnic politics we're dealing with. I just don't agree with that. I don't agree with trying to label someone or put them in a box of, you're just based on how you look. And I did deal with that. I broke some barriers in winning Star Search and having my name having my name on the cover of Playboy, and doing another celebrity pictorial after I won Playboy. I mean, after I won $100,000 on Star Search, I was able to do that because they didn't put your name on the cover of a magazine if it ended in a Z. Like mine. So I did break that, and that was a goal of mine at that time too. So I think I've manifested all the things that I've been passionate about doing, and I'm still doing that in a different way today, based more on my spirit and my mind rather than the physical part of me.
If you don't mind, I want to back up a little bit, back to Star Search and Johnny Carson. I think, I'm pretty sure I've talked to at least one other person that appeared on Carson. What were Johnny and Ed McMahon like? How they talk?
They were very nice. They were very nice, and I was very nervous. You can see clips of that on YouTube. You can see that on my website and on my YouTube. You can find that online to watch. But I was actually invited back when I did Can't Buy Me Love, but he had already kind of passed the torch and retired and given that to Jay Leno. And then, like I said, I was only in Hollywood for 2 years as an actress, and then I left Hollywood and got married and moved to Tennessee and didn't come back until the early 90s. And so it was never my passion. Acting wasn't my passion. It was something I fell into. I dabbled in it. I didn't really like the audition process of people saying, well, she's too this, she's too that, she's not this, she's not that. And so I didn't have a passion for it. I was drawn to comedy. I was the first woman to take my bra off on primetime television for Married with Children.
That's right, yeah.
A bit of acting. The acting that I did was mostly comedic, and it stood the test of time because everyone loved and still loves Camp Bonnie Love, Society, House 2, Married with Children. It's like, so I then sort of became I don't know, I really have always been my own person, so I never wanted anybody to say, you have to change your name, you have to change this, and this for you to do that. That's not me. So I've always sort of been my own independent. I don't mesh well with anyone trying to, mold me.
Put you in a box?
Something else. Yeah. So then I sort of, have always been, my husband says he hates when I say, in interviews. I forgot to stop doing that more. I started writing my feelings of what I perceive in our world from firsthand experience from my life. And that's kind of what my books are about. They're about mind, body, and spirit, staying healthy in your mind, your body, and your spirit through all that life throws at you. And I'm actually writing the follow-up to a little book I wrote called True Age, Timeless Beauty, which is really and that was honestly inspired by a attorney friend who came to me in my late 30s saying, Devin, would you write a beauty book? And I went, I don't know what I would write about a beauty book because I don't have a routine. I half the time don't wear makeup. I think it's because of years of modeling. I just don't have that feeling towards ritual makeup and hair and all that stuff. I just kind of go more in the natural direction. And so when I was writing this, I was writing it from a more inner, what is beauty from the inside out, and it's more of being aware and how you feel about the world instead of how the world views you physically. How you feel and think about yourself plays a big part in beauty, and all of that goes into manifesting the things you want in life. If that's important to you, physical beauty, I think if you have inner beauty, it shows on the outside more as well. And so I wrote it from that point of view, and it did very well. So and it's more of getting your life in balance also. I didn't write it from just a physical thing, because what inspired me to write that, which was very interesting, is it was during the beginning stages of reality TV, and I saw this reality show called The Swan, and they took a girl and basically made her over from head to toe with plastic surgery, weight loss, whatever, and they isolated her so she couldn't see herself until the big reveal at the end. And I thought, my God, this is crazy that you could just take a person and totally remake them from the outside, but what does that do to them on the inside once they see this reveal of themselves, and they showed her going through therapy as well. This was a reality show that I early 2000, like 2004.
Oh, okay.
So that's kind of what inspired me to write that book, and I'm now writing a follow-up, which I'm going to give away for free because I think our world needs a lot of support and a lot of love these days. And so I'm writing this book called True Wisdom, Timeless Spirit, which is going to be a little follow-up ebook that I'm going to give away for free on my website. And I'm going to write this book and give it to people who really need that balance of just being able to keep their lives in balance mentally, physically, and spiritually, especially now with what we've been through with lockdowns and COVID and fear and, you know, the tons of information that's just flooding our minds today. It's really important. So I get more of a feeling writing my feelings and speaking to people now. I'm enjoying Telegram, so you can find me there. But yeah, it's going to be fun to get back in front of the camera because I've sort of been behind the scenes a lot.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping that when you're all wrapped up with Trailblazers, that you'd be willing to come on for a few more minutes and talk to us about that, and I can promote that when it comes out.
Being in front of the camera. But getting back to Can't Buy Me Love was a lot of fun. We filmed it in Tucson. The cast and the crew and the synergy that we had going because we filmed it at Tucson High.
That's right.
It snowed that year. And Paula Abdul, I remember letting her hang out in my dressing room.
That's right.
In my dressing room because she had a back problem and she had hurt her back because she was choreographing the African anteater ritual.
Yes, that's right.
So, and that dance, oh my God, that African, we had to learn that dance. That was funny. So I just remembered that movie being a lot of fun, and it really, even though it was my second movie, it felt like my first.
Right.
I have great respect for everyone that I worked with on that movie, and it's very special to me. I really still can watch this movie today and feel proud of being a part of that.
Well, you rocked that dress you were in, by the way.
Oh, thank you. The white one?
You were in a purple one too, right?
Oh, yeah. The one at the end?
Yeah.
And the sparkling one?
Yeah, and you're like, I don't know you.
I didn't have many lines to say.
That's the one that line, I remember watching at the movie theater in 1987, and I remember that line actually was one that stuck with me. I don't know you, because that's when everybody started to like scatter, right, we don't want any part of Ronald Miller,
Right.
Yeah, it's
How old are you? How old were you when you...
I was 16 when it came out, so I was Amanda Peterson's age.
Oh, okay. So that's, I have to say, there's three things most people remember me from. Playboy, Star Search, Playboy, Society, Can't Buy Me Love.
Yeah, and just real quick, I know I need to let you go, but Society, I want to tell everybody on here, if you really want a freak out moment and you're not eating, don't eat while you're watching Society. Please don't do that. You don't want to sit there and have some Chinese food while you're, because it's going to appear on your screen too. But that's all I can say about that. It was exposed to that movie, and I watched it in anticipation of talking with you, and I was just absolutely, my jaw dropped. I was like, wow, this is crazy.
Actually, that movie, with the events that are going on and being revealed in our world today, you should go back and watch that.
Yeah,
it basically pertains to what is going on in our world today.
It's prophetic.
It is, and I was invited to groups that, like this one in Scotland, they were watching Society, and they wanted me to do a Q&A afterwards, and they just love this movie around the world, and it became this cult classic that I think resonates beyond what you see on the screen. Now, when I read the script for that movie, I was like, how the hell are they going to put this on the screen?
And they did it.
Yes, and it was, that's another podcast to talk about that one. But, I know you want to focus on camp.
Oh, no, you're fine. No, anything you want to say is fine. No.
But Society really resonates with what's going on in our world today.
Yeah.
And it totally is way before its time. And it definitely has, it's like a dark comedy, actually, more than, it's not a horror. I didn't look at it as a horror film.
No, it's not. It's sarcastic and funny, but there are some moments on the screen where you're like, whoa, what are we looking at here?
Like when he turned the guy inside out.
Yeah, that's one of them. Yeah, that's one of them.
Okay, that's why you said you should not eat any food.
No, don't do that. I'm not sure what to suggest. You might lose your appetite. It might be a good weight loss plan. But, Devin, you have been a fantastic guest, and I am so appreciative of you coming on and talking. Please tell everybody your web address.
You can just Google my name, Devin DeVasquez. You can find me Instagram, Facebook, my website, DevinDeVasquez.com. Telegram is where I hang out now. I really don't chat with as much as I used to on Facebook. I have a blog. Everything you can find, you just Google my name and you'll find me somewhere that you like to hang out.
Well, you are a pleasure to talk with, and you. It's cliche to say, but you are a unique person. You've done so much over the last 30 years. It's quite amazing. How much you've been involved with, how many people you know, and not just from Camp Ivy Love, but you met Johnny Carson, and Ed McMahon. So that's pretty amazing.
I know lots. That doesn't mean anything. It's basically how you feel about yourself and how you feel about others around you, and how you support your community, and how, if you have a passion for whatever you do, you're going to be successful at it. And I don't like to be put in a box or labeled, so I'm just Devin, so you just can't say, oh, she's this, she's that. No, she's done a lot of stuff. And what does that mean? That means she's been successful in a lot of different areas, but what does it really mean in the scheme of where we are consciously today? Not much. Doesn't mean anything.
True. Devin, again, I thank you, and I hope I can have you on another time to talk about Trailblazers after it comes out.
Sure. Yeah, we'll keep in touch, Dave. Have fun. And, everybody, I'm really grateful anybody comes over and chats with me on Telegram.
Fantastic. I really appreciate you, Devin. Take care.
Take care. Have a great day.
Okay, so we are here